some people have commented that it's almost more like a play in a way than a movie. You were commenting about Sunset Boulevard maybe being a little more technically interesting. I think that Joseph Mankiewicz, he was a director who, I mean, he was more about the writing in a way. He was more about the script and the story and the characters.
Because he was originally a writer. He was a
Yeah,
writer and a producer, and he wrote some great scripts. And he eventually got his opportunity to direct. But yeah, his heart and soul is a writer.
absolutely. And he really cared about characters, and he really cared about getting to the emotional truth or the psychological truth of the characters. And apparently, he would even give his scripts to a psychiatrist and get an opinion as to whether, is this accurate? Is this right? Does this make sense? Which I find interesting because I knew a theater artistic director who used to do that with the plays that he was producing. He would take them to his psychiatrist and say, read this play and give me a report on the characters, which I found strange because it makes sense for Joseph Mankiewicz to do it because he's writing the script. So he can actually change it if it doesn't make sense. If the psychiatrist says, no, a person who has this problem wouldn't really do that, then Mankiewicz could change the script. But an artistic director of a theater should not be changing any scripts. It's against the rules. And so I don't know what you can do with that report other than just say, well, the psychiatrist says this. But it made me wonder if maybe that artistic director had been influenced by Joseph Mankiewicz. But I think he was much more interested in that kind of psychological truth, the characters, and I think he even would go so far as to say that he thought it was wrong for a director to try and put in fancy shots, or anything that would call attention to the shot, because you're kind of pulling people out of the story and the truth. And you're just saying, hey, look at me, I'm the director, and I made the camera do this, And I think in some ways I kind of agree with that. I think just tell the story and let the characters be, let the actors do their thing. And yeah, it is kind of weird when somebody does really fancy things or there's really crazy editing and people go, wow, that director's a genius. Did you see that crazy editing? And I'm going, well,
Angus, it is a visual medium. I hate to disagree with you, but it is a visual medium. I mean, this movie is brilliant, but if you were watching it on mute, it would just look like a 1950s TV soap opera or something. It's very visually bland. The one scene, I think that was a real exterior scene where they're walking down the block, and it was just walking down the block. It was rear projection.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so awkward. You could tell like they're walking in place. You could tell like the people behind them weren't really behind them. It just looked very odd. Obviously, probably didn't look odd for 1950, but looking at it now, it just looks very clunky and awkward. And you wonder why they couldn't just shoot at least one scene with them walking down the block. But visually, I have to strongly disagree with you. This movie leaves a lot to be desired. It is very bland looking. It is, I don't know. It's just a lot of walking in and out of rooms, moving from room to room. Not a lot of exterior shots, no interesting angles, just two-shot, wide shot, close-ups. It's a very, very bland looking movie. Great movie, but visually, I don't know, man. I mean,
No,
you can have a great meal, but when you go to a restaurant, you want a great meal that also looks good. Presentation has to count for something.
Yes. Well, I would say there has to be a happy medium, and I think you're right that it is a little bland, and I think that he goes far in that direction. And that's why I say in some ways I agree. But I think there is a happy medium where you can hopefully have some interesting looking shots and maybe do some interesting moves, but it shouldn't draw you out of the story. It shouldn't be so crazy that it's like, whoa, that was an amazing
And it shouldn't be
camera
so bland that it draws you out of the story too. It's like, It can be so bland that that also draws you out of the story as well.
True.
Interesting
True.
enough, the one creative shot was like the last shot in the film, which
Yes.
is a great shot, and
Yes.
it's a great metaphor too, because you're talking about Eve, and Eve is like the first woman, and then you have her usurping her idol, and then here comes someone that views Eve as her idol, and then that woman usurps Eve, the first woman, and then you see what Eve spawns as that young actress looks into the mirror, and we see hundreds of her. This
Yes.
is what Eve spawns. I think that was an interesting metaphor, and the writing, it's a great
Mhm.
shot, but the shot comes from the writing.
Yes.
So I think he inadvertently created a great shot. His writing forced him into a great shot because it aids the script as well, wraps it up in a nice, neat little package with the final shot.
That's right. The shot supports the script. It supports the story. It doesn't take you out of it. And even if it did, it was the last shot of the movie. So at that point, it's okay if you kind of exit. But I don't think it did. I think it supports it, and I think that's important, and that makes sense. But um, but yeah, I think a happy medium would be best.